Welcome to another special episode of the Building Texas Show. We're in Hondo, Texas today, and I am thrilled to share the story of Hondo, and a lot of that story revolves around the airport.
It does.
And I think it would surprise people, a lot of people, to know that there is such a large infrastructure at that airport, and the economic opportunity that the airport gives to the city of Hondo. It is an incredible story. We're here with Ryan Elder. You're the manager at the airport?
Airport director. Yeah.
Airport director. So we're here with Ryan Elder, who is the director at the airport, and is really making it what it is growing into be in this phase of that airport's history. But Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
What is the history of the airport? Hondo Airport, if people don't know, why is it
There's
here?
a lot of history. We go all the way back to World War II.
Okay.
It was developed in 1942 for the war. It was 3,600 acres of property that was developed in 89 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was 4 runways, all the infrastructure, over 600 buildings, pretty much everything that you would need to sustain a small town.
Yeah.
At that time, the population of Hondo was 3,000, and then through the development of the airport, rose to 12,000 overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big undertaking.
And that was primarily airmen coming in, and it was a base?
Yes, it was an air navigation training facility, and in fact, it was the largest in the world during its time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Air navigation training? That's the
They would train the navigators to, get from point A to point B.
Okay.
Right? Very rudimentary way to do it in comparison to what we have now. Right? GPS, you just follow the magenta line. A lot of smart people have to learn that very rudimentary methodology to get from point A to point B back then.
So if you're a World War II era airman, there's a good chance that you came through Hondo, Texas at some point.
Very good chance.
And that's incredible for me to think about, because I think about Highway 90 coming west out of San Antonio, and we see the train constantly. So you have Highway 90 being automobile traffic, you have the trains going through, which is a huge economic engine for the region. Sure. But then the airport, and it's forgotten, but what does the airport do today that might surprise people?
Well, we are classified in the NIPIUS as a general aviation airport. However, the size of it, we started off at 3,600 acres. We're about 2,400 acres now through land sales and distribution.
Yeah.
You could probably compare us to a commercial service airport in relationship to size. We're actually about the same size, if not a little bit larger than San Antonio International. We actually have one more runway than they do. We're not quite as long as they are, but we are equal in size. So it's to have that kind of an asset in a small town like Hondo is great. And what's interesting is not only just the GA aircraft come in there, but we also entertain commercial size aircraft. They'll come in for their end of life.
Okay.
So it's a big push to retire, aging aircraft. They'll fly them in. They'll take off all the good usable parts so they can supply the fleet with keep those planes going, and then they'll cut up the rest and ship it out on trucks.
That's incredible. I've never really thought about, we see the boneyards that get celebrated of airplanes, but this is where it actually gets broken down.
Yeah, one of the very few places in the United States. Yeah, there's only about a handful of them that do it.
And the airport partners with San Antonio International in some ways, or businesses that conduct business in both airports. Am I saying that the right way?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, the company that initially started this out in Hondo in 2013, 14, is hangared at San Antonio International.
Okay.
They started that business. They're no longer the owners of it. It's under a different ownership now, but that's kind of where it derived from. Yeah.
Saying it differently, I would say it's an opportunity for aviation work to happen off of an international airport. So I could see San Antonio serving the travel market, but Hondo could really service the same planes in a maintenance or scrap or end of life, as we've discussed.
And that's what they do. They're not just a scrapping company. They're considered an MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So they can do anything from a small Cessna to a 777.
And the company here is that Hondo Aerospace.
Yes, Hondo Aerospace.
And they're still doing a lot of that work.
They are.
And that's why there's 737s on the runway out there, or on the airport facility,
ramp,
on the ramp. Where does that go from here? Because I see 2,400 acres. I see far fewer than 600 buildings now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I see the space for more buildings to come in.
So much space. I mean, we have, like I said, 2,400 acres is quite a bit. You know, a lot of that's not really developable because it's the air side inside the, basically inside the runways, if you will. But we have a lot of outside of that, probably a good 600-700 acres that's available for, anything from aeronautical to non-aeronautical.
Yeah.
They could tie into the rail. A lot of, you have Martin Asphalt that's out there that's right by the airport that ties into the rail. Castro Avenue kind of splits the airport property. And so everything east of that is still considered airport property, but it's very much developable in a lot of different, for many industries or even homes.
Well, and as I look around the state and I talk to people specifically around the Texas Space Commission and the future of aeronautics in the state, there's a big push for space commercialization. And that has a big aviation component to it typically.
Sure.
So if I look at Spaceport Houston, it's tied to an airport.
Right.
If I look at Kerrville, they just bought their airport facility, the city and county together. That's going to drive innovation in the aerospace world. So my hope is that we can make people aware that there's this beautiful facility here that would be prime for companies looking to grow on an airfield, or they need some of that infrastructure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a hidden gem, and it's only a matter of time before somebody really finds us.
Yeah.
That anchor that's, hey, look, you really take a look at Hondo, what they have to offer.
And your proximity to San Antonio, the ease of Highway 90 in and out, seems to be a real high selling point for the property.
Absolutely.
So today, what happens at an airport like that? Who flies in and out on the general aviation side? Is it ranchers and farmers? Is it hunters? Is it business people coming into town?
All the above. Yeah, we get a myriad of people that come in, especially during the hunting season, dove season. A lot of corporate aircraft come from all over the United States. As you may know that there's a lot of exotic ranches out near here, so a lot of people fly in for those. So yeah, we get anything from just your everyday just wants to bebop around, all the way up to those corporate aircraft that come in. So we get it all.
So if you like plane spotting, it's probably a fun place to sit, and you don't know what you're going to see.
During the busier times, absolutely, yeah.
And is there a flight school here as well?
There's not a Part 141 flight school anymore. We did have one. They were focused mainly on schooling international students.
Okay.
There was a lot of red tape. It didn't really work out. The domestic market, Hondo is kind of a far drive when you have a lot of other options in the on the 35 corridor. But we do have a flight instructor out there, very knowledgeable guy. So he takes care of a lot of the one-off situations, but unfortunately not a traditional flight school out there.
And where do you see the future of work coming to the airport? So if I'm a student at Hondo ISD, how should I be thinking about the airport as part of my future?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm actually in discussions with the superintendent of the high school at this moment to do a Young Eagles program. And for those who don't know what Young Eagles, it's through the EAA. They take students to the airport, and EAA members will sign up through the Young Eagles program, get qualified and background checked, all that good stuff, and take students on basically discovery flights at no cost to introduce them. There's many discussions on trying to integrate some aeronautical type activities in the school as well. So
I've seen that done really well with Air Force JROTC, and I was amazed to hear about high school sophomores through that ROTC program getting their pilot's license as a scholarship, getting it funded to go get their license as a high school student going into a future of service, hopefully.
Yep. There's a lot of great programs.
And you've served the country, so thank you for your service in that way. But was that your introduction to aviation through the service?
It was. It's funny, when I was talking to the recruiter, I said, I don't care what I do. I just want to work with planes.
So what did you end up doing?
I ended up being an aviation structural mechanic on F-14s and F-18s.
That sounds like a pretty fun job.
It was amazing. Yeah.
And that's what got you into this role, really put you on the path for aviation career.
Yeah, I found my love for it.
Yeah. And so you've been in this role in Hondo for a couple of years now.
7 years.
7 years. And what have you seen? How have you seen Hondo transform over that period of time?
You know, it's been slow, honestly. I mean, I see great things coming. It's just been really spinning the wheels, trying to get everything out here. It's not a lot of change, but I think, you know, that might be good in some sense, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're in a small town, you don't want to see a lot of change.
Quick change is hard.
Yeah, quick change is hard. Responsible change is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the airport, I think, really enables that and puts it in where future buildings, future work happens in a place that's not very disruptive. It's not going to change the fabric of Main Street Hondo,
right?
But it's going to give it a real opportunity to grow and expand and bring in future jobs, more industrial complex.
Yep.
In the right place.
In the right place. Yeah, we consider that the industrial park.
Well, and it's the smart growth aspect of where do we put it that's not disruptive and it still allows prosperity to occur around it.
Yep.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that you're working with Hondo ISD and programs like that to introduce kids to aviation. If I look at the airport today, what's coming in next? What is your next big project that you're working on today?
Well, we're in discussions with another company, a maintenance, repair, and overhaul type situation, to bring in, you know, commercial sized jets for maintenance and repair, as well as maybe some additional part out, some end of life tear down. So that'd be a great addition. There's always somebody, you know, kind of kicking the tires, right?
Yeah.
You know, they see the potential. So we're always entertaining, you know, all the different people that want to, you know, do something out there.
And then the general aviation community really explores Texas in a different way. And for those that don't know, the ability to fly the state is really a nice way to move across such a large area.
Right.
And to see the hill country or South Texas from the air is a whole different perspective. So I see a lot of people that go town to town, they'll land, and then they go out and search for the $100 hamburger as an example.
Right.
What draws that general aviation pilot to land here and look around? Is it avgas? Is it something more?
I don't know that gas really plays a role in them wanting to explore.
Yeah.
You know, if they're moving from place to place, you know, just looking for somewhere to stop just for fuel, I can see that maybe playing a role. But if you're just looking to explore, I don't know that the gas really makes a difference. But really having something that is of interest in that town.
Yeah.
Or at that airport. You know, we're exploring the idea of bringing back a restaurant. The airport used to have a restaurant, very well received by everybody, the aviation community and the community itself. But we still sometimes get calls, "Hey, is that airport or that restaurant still open?" And you know, it's been probably 2 decades that it's, you know, it unfortunately burned down. But so we're exploring that opportunity to see if it's a feasible project to bring something like that. And I think that's something that the airport needs to bring back some life into it, make it a destination.
Yeah. When I think about like Gillespie County, they have a diner, hamburger joint.
Beautiful facility.
And they get tremendous traffic, and people go for that type of experience. And I'd love to see Hondo invest in that. And I think there's an appetite for the community to really find that solution.
I certainly hope so, yeah. But we were going to do our due diligence.
Do it right.
And we're, you know, undergoing a feasibility study. Just to make sure that this, you know, I think the initial buzz will be very great, but we also want to make sure it's sustainable.
And how does the airport, how do you, as the director of the airport, get involved locally on those economic development conversations or on business promotion or really getting the community involved in the airport in that way?
Well, I mean, we've tried a lot of different things. We used to do a movie night out there, they did a large equipment petting zoo, bring a lot of the large equipment out there and have the community come out and just,
That's fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. So we try to, test the, different things to bring the community out. And it was interesting. I think the first, couple of years there, I was hearing that the community didn't even know we had an airport, which was surprising to me.
But that's not unique around the country. People
Really?
don't, there's a great movie that I'll happily promote, 1-6 Right.
Yeah.
It's the history of Van Nuys Airport
Yep.
as a general
I've watched
aviation
it.
airport. And it talks about how airports are dying. A lot of communities are getting rid of their general aviation airport instead of seeing it as a true asset.
An economic engine. It can be. I think part of the problem is encroachment.
Yes.
So what you have to do is you have to plan accordingly. You have to zone areas that you really don't want any homes in. You really want to make sure that you don't get too close, because that will happen.
Yeah.
Right. The person that builds the house right over top of the the approach or departure, downwind, they start complaining about noise, and that's kind of where it starts. And I think that's what's happened with the Van Nuys Airport. They just encroached on it so much. And
Yeah, Van Nuys, Chicago, there's the stories of what we've lost. But I think in Hondo, like, you have that ability to really set up the industrial area,
Right.
and avoid that person building a house and then realizing they don't like the noise.
Right.
Noise is greatly improved in aviation,
Sure.
but it is an economic engine. The General Aviation Airport is a commerce center, and I'm thrilled to see that the infrastructure around the city of Hondo is really prioritizing that as where can we create economic opportunity.
Yeah, lots of available land out there to do that.
How do people interact with the airport? If somebody says, hey, I want to learn more, I really like what I've heard today, where would they find more information about you?
Well, I mean, we go to the website. It's got some information there, but Scene with the Economic Development Corporation has done an amazing job marketing, not just the airport, but the city as a whole.
Yeah.
So there's great resources on the EDC website. Their marketing alliance counterparts have done an amazing job to promote, again, the airport and everything around it. So EDC, there's, the airport web page is really just kind of focused on what our facilities have.
But if I'm a pilot coming into Hondo, that's an important thing to know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll give you, how many runways we have, our length, all that good,
And what's that website? What is the website?
Hondo-tx.org.
Okay. And then just find airport
Yeah.
or EDC
Yep,
or
yep.
all of the things we've talked about on hondo-tx.org.
That's right.
And for you personally, what's the future at the airport? What is your passion project at the airport that you want to see come to fruition?
Well, I think in the short term, I think the airport it would be a great place for cargo.
Okay.
There's just so much available land to get something like that. I mean, a FedEx, a UPS. I mean, even an Amazon would be great, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think cargo would be a great thing for Hondo. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
Well, I would make that call to developers, to business owners, to people that are looking for, hey, I want to be in the Central Texas, South Texas area, and I need an asset like this. The Hondo Airport's definitely one to think about, because it is a little bit of a blank canvas at this
It
point.
really is. Yeah, so much available land to develop on. And another thing, I mean, you may be familiar with is VTOL and eVTOL.
Okay.
Vertical takeoff and landing kind of aircraft, that emerging technology. A lot of that land that's not really necessarily connected to the runway. Those green fields outside the fence are now very valuable to that type of business.
Well, I've seen that, again, the example of Spaceport Houston, and we talked to Intuitive Machines, and they're right off the airport complex, but they have an engine testing facility that they're able to do that testing because of the proximity to the airport,
Sure.
because of the noise and everything else related to it. It became a great economic engine for their company to be able to do that right there on their site. And that happens because they're in that aviation district.
Yep.
So, Ryan, it's a pleasure to sit down with you today, learn more about the airport, the history. I don't know that I would have known it's the largest airman training navigation site during World War II.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that have roots in Hondo and a story of how they went through Hondo, Texas. And I hope that we'll hear those from the community at large when we put this message out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a little museum in the airport terminal that we've kind of built up over the years, from donations. So definitely come on out and look at all the history that we have out there.
And if you have a story about Hondo and want to share it with the airport, I'm sure they would love to see pictures
Absolutely.
and remember what it's been.
Absolutely.
And then drive what it's going to be. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for the way that you're building Texas.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for watching the Building Texas show. Be sure to follow us across all social media platforms and let us know what you like.